Hi, and welcome back to another edition of Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and my new series, Plastic Models for Beginners. In the last series, we built the Tamiya Panzer Kampfwagen Mark II as the opening kit due to its simplicity and the fact that it goes together very well. So I was able to demonstrate, for lack of a better term, basic modeling skills. Dealing with the parts, cleaning them up, and assembling the kit. So that is done. So the next logical step is to paint the kit, and that's what this series is going to deal with. So I've already got the paint picked, and I've got the rest of the supplies we need. So let's take a look at the kit and what we need to do to get it ready to paint it. Alright, so here's the kit, and need to do a little prep for the kit before we paint it. Now, one thing you might want to keep in mind is working on a model, finger oils, solvents, glue, whatever, can be distributed all over this plastic while you're building it. So you might want to take a look at it and maybe take a cotton swab with some alcohol, just regular rubbing alcohol, or even a Q-tip or a rag, a lint-free rag, and then just gently wipe all the surfaces down, make sure there's no residual fingerprints or finger oils or anything, or solvents or anything like that left on the plastic. That will help with paint adhesion and keep you from seeing fingerprints that are left behind. So just do that. You can even use, a lot of people use, just throw it in the sink with some water and a simple dishwashing liquid. Squirt that in there and then just wipe it down with a soft brush or even a toothbrush, just being careful not to break any of the small details off. So you got to be kind of gentle. So once it's all cleaned up and ready to go, then what you'll want to do is and let me say this before we move on. The cleaning part, honestly, I rarely do that. I generally keep my hands, I'm just running to the sink all the time, washing my hands, making sure there's nothing there. And I do look for fingerprints, and I will locally clean if there's a blatant fingerprint or something. But I don't really wash it. But a lot of people recommend it, so that's something for you to decide if you want to do. Okay, so there's that. All right, so after your model's built, if you cleaned it up, if you found it necessary, then we kind of need to take some of the parts of the kit. We need to disassemble it a little bit for ease of painting. Now, some people will paint an entire kit fully assembled like this, tracks and all. Now, my method, and I find it easiest for the way I build models, and again, it's a 10 by 10 rule. You ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers on how they do it. I do it this way because I find it the easiest, and that will become apparent later on in the next series. But for now, this is normally what I do. Take the turd off. Okay, take that off. Keep that as a separate piece. Then I take the tracks off, and it's very easy. You just kind of roll them off, and then they'll pop off. That is one of the benefits of Tamiya kits, is because the wheels roll and they're put on with those poly sleeves, like in the other, like in the assembly steps. The wheels roll, makes it easy to take these tracks off. All it is just a matter of kind of getting it started, just like on a bicycle chain. If you're familiar with bicycles, just kind of roll it off of there and then pull it off. Okay, because we want to paint the tracks separately, but that'll be for something else. That'll be for detail painting. Right now, we're just worried about spraying this whole kit. Now, here's something else. You can do this if you want. Not really necessary, but for the method we're going to use to paint this, this is what I would suggest. Okay. Now, once you built a few kits and you know what you're going to do with it, this step can be avoided by not even putting it on. Now, whenever I built the kit initially, I was just showing you how to build the kit and put it completely together. So if you built the kit and you intend to paint it, then you would skip putting these wheels and tracks on. You would just leave them off. But since they are on the sleeves, they will slide off. Just gently twist them back and forth. You know, just a little pressure, doesn't take much. They're pretty durable, but you know, you got to be careful. And you take the wheels off, okay? And I'll tell you why in a minute, but I'm going to turn the camera off for a second so I can take the rest of these off so you don't have to be bored watching me do it. Okay, now we've got the turret off and we've got all the wheels off. So the reason I take the wheels off, and again, this is just another note, is it makes it easier to paint inside of here and get good coverage without the wheels and the running gear on. Now, newer kits, oftentimes all these parts right here are separate, so it's a little more delicate. So you want to pre-plan and make sure you just don't put the wheels on if you're going to paint in there. Okay, so just quick note. All right, so we've got that apart. Now what we need to do is get everything ready so you can paint it, because obviously it's kind of hard to hold these parts and paint. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to show you what type of paint I've decided to use on this kit, and that I think will be the easiest for the beginning modeler. There's two ways to paint a kit. It's either by brush or by spraying it. If you paint it by brush, I'm going to defer you to Owen at Quick Kits. He's got a YouTube channel called Quick Kits, name's Owen, and he does a stellar job painting kits with a brush. He paints all of his kits with a brush, whether it's armor, whether it's vehicles of any kind, aircraft, he paints with a brush, and he does a very good job. I am not good at painting with a brush, and I never do. I only paint the detail parts with a brush. So I'm going to put a link in the description. I asked him if that would be okay, and he said it would. So you can go there, you can see what type of brushes work great, which you'll need brushes in the future, and he'll show you how to do it with a brush. But the other way, and the way I find easier, because you know I have the equipment to do it, is to spray it. And there's basically two ways you can spray a model kit. That's either with an aerosol can or an airbrush. Now, since this is plastic models for beginners, we're not going to talk about airbrushes right now, because that's a tool you'll want to get later. It's something you don't want to invest in if you're not going to, you know, pursue this hobby any further than maybe a couple of kits, or maybe it's just not your thing. But we'll talk about those on a later episode. But aerosol is the way I've chosen to paint this kit, because it's fairly easy, and aerosol cans of model paint are pretty easy to find. So here is what I am going to be using for this kit. I've got Tamiya brand surface primer in gray, which is readily available, at least around here. But any model, aerosol type paint by any kind of model manufacturer will work. There are also a lot of people that will use spray cans from a hardware or automotive store. As long as it's an enamel type spray, a lot of people use it with great results for primer. Then for the paint, I have chosen, since it is very easy to find, especially here in the United States, is Tester's Model Master Custom Spray Enamel. And for this project, I chose Africa Mustard, which is a reasonable facsimile of the color that the Africa Corps used on their vehicles in World War II. So, do you need primer? That's a personal preference. I like to use primer just because it gives a nice surface for the paint, and also, especially on stuff like aircraft where there's seams, or if there are other seams like in a turret or whatever, and you've had to either make sure it was glued just precisely, or you had to fill it or sand it or whatever. Using primer will allow you to see any imperfections, and you can fix that by sanding or filing or whatever you need to do before you apply the paint. So what I'll be doing is I'll be using this surface primer first, and then I will be using the paint. If you don't want to use a surface primer, just skip that part of this video. It's not going to take long. It's not absolutely necessary. It's just something I do. A lot of people don't use it. You just skip right to this and spray with the paint. Okay, it's relatively inexpensive and it's easy to use, but you want to make sure you use it outside or in a designated spray area because there will be overspray and a lot of odor. Okay, so that's out of the way. That's the type of paint we're going to use. Now we need to get all these parts ready to paint. So what you'll want to do is you need a way that you can secure all these parts for painting. And one way to do it is you can take a piece of cardboard or a piece of plastic or whatever you have. Let's take this cardboard envelope here, for instance. You want to secure, especially the wheels. This works good for the wheels. But you want to secure them in a way that they won't fly away whenever you try and paint them. Okay? So what I do in a case like this, and there's a million, again, 10 by 10 rule. There's a million ways to do this. Some people will use sticks, or they'll take Q-tips or / cotton buds, cut the head off and use those as stems, little sticks, whatever. So they have a way to hold it without spraying paint in their hands. But this is the way I do it. That way I can do all the wheels at the same time. I just take some masking tape, any kind will do, and I take a piece and get it ready, and then I get 2 short pieces. Now for a strip this long, I'll do 3. And what I do is I turn my long piece of tape upside down and tape the end down like this. Then I take another piece and tape it down. And then I'll take another piece in the middle here, just because it's a long strip of paint, it won't flop around. And I have myself a sticky surface to stick the wheels to. That way I can spray all of the wheels at the same time. Thusly. Okay, and then I'll get 2 more pieces to do this and this. Okay, so I'll do those real quick and then come back. Okay, so here are the wheels ready to go for painting. Now you may ask, what about the other side of these wheels? Well, what you can do is once you spray the wheels and you get all of this under here sprayed, you can let it dry, and then you can attach the wheels, and then with the wheel attached, you can spray, spin it, spray, spin it, and we'll do that whenever it comes to time to spray the thing. Okay, so the wheels are ready to go, and this way, you can hold spray and not worry about getting spray paint all over your hands, and kind of helps buffer some of the overspray as well. Okay, so that will take care of that. Then we have the hull, and one way you can do it is, using a rubber glove or whatever. You could hold the kit or set it on its side on our spraying surface whenever we get to it. Spray that side like that. You can flip it over and spray that side. And once those, then you can move on to the wheels or whatever, and then let that cure up for a little bit. Then you can hold by the tips of the axles, because they're not going to be, if you rub some paint off, even if it's still just not quite dry, it's not going to hurt anything. Okay, so then you can spray the back and the front and the top. Okay, but I'll demonstrate all that while we're actually doing the painting. So we'll just let this sit. You can even put it on a stand of some kind if you want. A lot of people will take, you know, a bottle or can and they will glue it, or not glue it, but, you know, stick it somehow, whether it's, you know, two-sided tape or, you know, Elmer's glue, something that'll hold it and that you can break loose later. And then they can spray it by turning it around, okay? That's another way you can do it. Then for the turret, same thing. You know, you just need to figure out a way to secure it. You can use, for example, blue tack, something like that. Okay, stick it on there, and there you go. You can turn your turret around and paint it. If you don't have blue tack or whatever, it doesn't really matter. You can hold it by the barrel, spray everything you need to spray, set it aside, work on something else, and then once it's cured a little bit, hold it here and spray the barrel. Okay, there's a number of different ways you can do it. You just need to monkey around with it, and you can see better whenever I'm actually painting the kit. The tracks we are going to save, and I will tell you why. Number one, these old kits, these tracks are made out of some kind of a vinyl, and enamel paints do not stick well. They stick well, but it takes them forever to dry on this vinyl material for some reason, and after a while the solvents in enamel paint can, the track will eventually, it can snap, fall apart, it can warp. It just doesn't work very well. So we're going to use a different kind of paint on this, but we'll get to that later when we start working on the detail painting. So I think everything is prepped and ready to go as far as what we're going to do to paint it. So the next section will be actually putting some paint on the kit.
Alright, so all the prep work has been done, and we are ready to actually start painting, or priming, and then painting the kit. So first off, this right here is just a rudimentary exhaust system I have set up out in my shop area. I'm not going to turn it on because it makes too much noise, and you don't have to mess with it. I'll talk about that kind of stuff later on, so let's not worry about the background. Also, if the sound's not that great, again, I'm in my shop, so it's not as conducive to video out here, maybe. But we'll find out once I play this back. So anyway, we've got the kit here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set these two larger pieces aside, and the first thing we'll paint will be the wheels. We'll actually prime. So I've got my primer here. Make sure it's shaken up really well, and maybe test a little bit. Okay, looks good. So what you want to do is whenever you use an aerosol type paint, you'll want to start past your subject and move across. Okay, now we want to get on the tire portion as much as we can. It's not as critical as making sure we get the face part of it, because we're going to be doing the detail painting of the tires later on, so that's not quite as crucial. But you want to get as good and even coverage as you can. And what you want to do is use a few light coats, not a big heavy coat, because you don't want it to run or to puddle up in the detail. So you just start on one side and spray across. Now this stuff comes out in a lot of volume, so be careful. You might want to practice on some scrap first to see how much paint actually comes out, because if you get too heavy-handed, you're really going to mess stuff up. So we'll do these here, back and forth, like that. See, it's all nice and shiny. Let's put another coat on the top there. Okay, so that's pretty decent coverage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that aside and let it dry a little bit before we put another coat on. In the meantime, we'll do the turret. Okay, so I'm going to do the under portion first, again, because it's not quite as critical. You don't have to worry about getting paint on the bottom of the turret here, because you're not even going to see that. So these panels here, underneath the gun area, like that. Okay, then let's do the sides, back. And again, if you're not getting this completely covered with these passes, don't worry about it. It's better to have light coats and build them up than to put a heavy coat and have it just be puddled up. Okay, so let's do the top and the gun. Don't worry about the gun, we'll do that later. Okay, so that's a pretty decent coat. So I'm going to set that aside, and we'll do the actual tank itself. So what I'm going to do, and be careful, because if you have, you know, a lot of paint on your fingers, and I suggest wearing a glove so you don't get it on your fingers, is make sure you don't have any stickiness on your fingers, because it'll leave residual on there. So let's paint this part first. Sorry about the shakiness, I just had a cup of coffee, actually two. Again, quick passes. Flip it over, do it the other direction. Okay, and we'll let that one ride for now. So flip it over. Okay, and the reason you're flipping it over is because the direction you paint, you're going to have spots that aren't going to get covered by the paint. Okay, so you need to go two different directions. Okay, so we got that. All right, so now I'm going to set that aside. And this stuff dries really quickly, and it's kind of cool here where I am right now, but this stuff will dry really quickly. And you know, it says not to be used below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's in the probably upper 50s here where I am right now, but this stuff is still drying really quickly. Okay, so now you may not be able to see it too well on the camera there, but these are nice and dull. They have dried. So let's go ahead and put another coat on, being a little more careful to get better coverage this time, but again, not heavy coats. So we'll go sideways like that, sideways on that one. Then we're going to flip it around, sideways like that, sideways like that. Now you'll even want to turn it this way, because see, we've got some bare plastic spots underneath. Spray it like this. Now see, this is the prime reason you don't want to do this in an enclosed house or something like that. I don't know if you can see the residual paint, but it's nasty. Alright, so we've got the turret is ready for, not quite ready for another coat yet. Alright, so let's go ahead and hold it by the axles, like I talked about in a previous segment. Hold it by the axles, and we'll start spraying the upper portion of the model. And what you want to do is you want to, because of all these angles and nooks and crannies and stuff, you're going to want to hold it at an angle so you can spray from the side and get inside of those angles. And that's why it's important to do numerous light coats instead of one heavy coat. So let's go ahead and start spraying that. Okay, flip it around. Like that. Now let's go ahead and shoot some across the front. Again, tilting, getting in all the hard to reach spaces. We'll flip it around. Okay, and then the back. So we're going to let that sit for a minute and take a look at the wheels. Okay, now in looking at the wheels, it looks like we've got really good coverage on the whole thing. So we're going to call the wheels done as far as the primer goes. So let's go ahead and do the turret again. Again, we're going to get this at an angle so we can get underneath all of this. Now, once I get finished with all this, I'm going to talk a little bit more, I think, about airbrushes and stuff like that. But we'll be doing that later, but just be prepared. Okay, so the turret, we got that. Okay, the hull, is still a little bit wet. So we're going to call it quits right here just for a few minutes and let that dry, and then I'll start the video up again. All right, I'm back, and I just want to point something out. Now I don't know if you can see it, but on the edge of this turret, whoops, right in the front here, you can see a run. That's where I got a little heavy-handed. Now that may dry flat, but if it doesn't, if you end up with some runs like this, especially on a flat surface, yeah, sorry guys, it's not going to be that big a deal because it can be fixed. That's one of the reasons I like to prime first, is when stuff like that happens, I can fix it, because all it'll take is just very light sanding, and then we can go ahead with painting the kit. So we're going to call the turret done. The wheels are done. And as you can hear, I turned on my ventilation because I am doing it in an enclosed building, and it's getting kind of fumey in here. So I'm sorry about the noise, but you know, I'll try and talk loudly enough that you can hear what's going on. But yeah, it's getting pretty cloudy in here. So let's go ahead and put another coat of primer in the running gear area. Again, being careful not to spray too much, but getting the angles to where we get the coverage we need. See, this is already dry to the touch, and it's only been just a very few minutes since I turned the camera off. Okay, so we got that side. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not painting the bottom. Now, a lot of people paint the bottom. I don't. You don't see it. You know, I'll make sure I get underneath the edges, but I just, you know, that's just me. There's a lot of people that paint the entire model, and that's perfectly fine. I just don't find it necessary because I'm not going to model this thing upside down. So I'm flipping upside down, and this angle plate I am going to spray, which will get more of the underside of the back. Okay, same thing with the front. Okay, then I want to make sure I get down from the top so it gets down in behind those spare tracks. Some of the detail areas, filling that in. Again, just light bursts with this paint, or this primer, because if you don't, you could overload it and end up with more runs. And some of these runs would be really hard to fix because they're in enclosed small areas. Now I'm just touching up stuff. And with this pass, it should probably be done with the priming. But we shall see. Now, one thing that I like about this Tamiya surface primer is it does dry quickly, and it dries really flat. It's a lacquer-based product, so it really gives you good results, and it evens out really well. Even if you know, if it looks kind of weird at first, once it dries, once it cures, then it looks really good. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I think we're going to call this done as well. We're going to let this dry, and then we'll come back and start putting some paint on. Okay, so now we are ready to do the paint. So make sure that you shake your can up really well of paint. And when you first start shaking it, you may not hear the ball rattling around. It's because it's stuck in the pigment on the bottom of the can. So shake it until it breaks loose, and then shake it really good. And then you're ready to go. So again, I'm going to test a little bit right there on the edge. Again, you know, this stuff really flows out of here, so you got to be careful not to spray too much on there. So we'll do the same thing as before. Start over here. See how quickly that's covering? That's a lot of paint. Okay, so we got that. Now let's do the turret. And that run fixed okay, so we don't have to mess with that. So we'll do a few quick coats on here. Again, being very careful not to overdo it. There's a high volume of paint coming out of this thing. I can't remember it coming out that much. Jeez, oh Pete. A lot of paint, but you can do it. I've got faith in you. Okay, so same thing on the bottom. Flip it over. A light mist of paint on there. Sorry, guys. Okay, got that. Let's go ahead and do some across the front. Yeah, shaky dude here. Okay, for this part I'm going to leave it sitting on that on this deal here, just because, as you can see, I'm still kind of shaky. Need to lay out the copy. I'm doing model work. So light dusting. Don't overdo it, because you can come back and give it more coverage. Okay, so we got that part, so I'm going to set that aside. Let's take a look at the wheels. As you can see, these aren't drying as quick. This doesn't dry as quickly as the primer does. But we got a pretty good coat on there, so it looks pretty good. So I'm going to let that sit for a little bit and let that dry, and then we'll come back and do another coat. Okay, so the first coat has had a chance to dry, so now we'll apply the next and hopefully final coat. So same thing, don't spray too much, don't get all crazy. And get a glove, which I forgot, so I don't get paint all over my hands. That's one drawback of this type of paint, is it's hard to get off your hands once you get it on there. So anyway, here we go. So let's give it another, clear the nozzle out a little bit. And that's something else that might be a good idea too, is a little bit of paint can sometimes get stuck in a little opening of the spray nozzle. So just give it a couple of quick shots. Okay, so there's that. Let's go ahead and give another quick shot on the wheels. It's looking pretty good. Whoops. Alright, and then another shot on the hull. Now what I'm going to do is get the suspension area first, and then the other side of the suspension area. Get the back. And then set it down right here to do the rest. Spin it around. Shake the can some more. Okay, so that's another coat. We'll let that sit for a bit and then check it here in a minute. Okay, it looks like everything is painted up and nice and solid as far as the color goes. So we'll call it quits with spraying the model, and we'll get back inside and take a look at it. Okay, blokes and blokettes, here we have the painted kit. Everything is nice and uniform looking, so it looks like we shall be ready for the next step. So the next step will be to
paint the details, such as the rubber portion of the wheels, the gun barrels, tools, other stuff like that. So what we're going to do is call it quits on this video, because we have now got the base coat on. So the next video we will begin to paint the details. We get that done, then we'll move on to decals. So that's it for now. Again, if you have any questions or comments or anything, please leave them below, and I will also, as I said earlier in this video, I will leave the link for Owen at Quick Kits YouTube channel, so you can go over there to see how you can get your model painted just using paintbrushes instead of a spray can. So until the next time, which shouldn't be too awful far in the future, I'm going to try to get it done quicker than sooner than later, we'll go over painting. So thanks again for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and Plastic Models for Beginners, and I will see you next time.